Hello, everybody. Welcome into today's podcast. This is Fox Sports Shoals Friday Night Football Live. You're on with the Magic Man, Mike Ezekiel, and the big guy, Matt Selesky. We got a good show today, and want to wish everybody a happy Thanksgiving. Hope everybody had a good Thanksgiving. Of course, that was Thursday. Of course, I got to hang out with Matt on Thanksgiving. That was a lot of fun, and now we're getting close to Christmas, so wishing everybody a Merry Christmas as well. Matt, state championship's coming up in Alabama high school football. Pretty pumped up for it.
Yeah, it's going to be really exciting. Unfortunately, the Florence Falcons, one of our local teams here, lost. Very competitive game with Clay Chalkville, and I was really hoping they could make that run. I think if they could have got to the state championship game, they could have won it. But they probably played the best team in the state. Came up a little short, but Deschler's going to be going and representing the Shoals area in the 4A state championship game and some other really good games around the state. So some good football coming up this, I guess, Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday of this week, the way they got it scheduled. So I'm looking forward to some of the action.
Yeah, and of course, Deschler is going to be in that Friday game at 11 o'clock. They're going to be taking on Leeds in the 4A state championship. So Florence will be represented, or actually Tuscumbia will be represented, the Shoals area. And Florence, of course, didn't make it, as we talked about, but Deschler's in there. Made an incredible run, given all that's happened. The head coach, Coach Linville, passed away. And we all know what happened there. And, of course, our thoughts are still with Deschler, and they've really rallied around. And Coach Statham, the interim head coach, and they've really made a run. Beating Cordova last week, handily beat them, making it to the state championship. Man, they got a lot of support from this community and have a good chance to win it all. And we'll talk about Deschler in a little bit. But, of course, you can tune in to 97.9 FM and listen in for the show. And, of course, Jimmy O and JD and Matt have the radio show there. And I don't know exactly what the plan is for that. Are y'all going to do any Deschler coverage, or y'all going to, or I know y'all may transition into some basketball later on, or.
No, I think we wrapped up our series for this year last week. We were going to do a pregame show, but with Deschler playing at 11 a.m., it'd be kind of hard to work in a pregame show early Friday morning. But we're certainly going to be supporting the Deschler Tigers and wish them well. But our last Friday Night Football live show was last week. But obviously we'll be doing it again next year, and there'll be other things you can tune into. And so kind of always be listening to 97.9, get a lot of great coverage on there. But we are finished with the high school football show for the season.
But hey, while we're talking about it, man, what a great job that Jaleesa, the producer, has done putting this all together and, bringing in a good staff. And the Big River Broadcasting Group did a great job of getting this together. The 97.9 show, the pregame, postgame, it's been amazing to listen to. And it does a lot of great coverage. And it's done a lot of good stuff for the community, working together with Times Daily and, other organizations like that to broadcast these games, or not broadcast them, but, have an analysis of these games, letting everybody know the score, having a scoreboard show. That's something that this community really enjoys, and I've really enjoyed, the Friday Night Football live show, and especially these podcasts too. And Matt, this may be our last football podcast, so let's have a lot of fun with it.
Oh man, we will. And also too, I think with the Fox Sports Shoals, doing a weekly tailgate, setting up, David Havens and Nina and a group of other people at Big River go out there and really get the fans involved. You get interactive within the community. So I think they've really achieved the goal of Fox Sports Shoals of really getting out in the community and just taking high school football to another level with the coverage here. So look forward to many more successful years with the Fox Sports brand.
Absolutely. And shout out to everybody that had a part in this. And, of course, that's a lot of hard work going into that. And we want to give a shout out to all those people with Times Daily, with Fox Sports Shoals, with all the others, AL.com, and all the media people that cover these games. They do a great job, and I really enjoy being a part of all of it. So I just wanted to mention that, but we don't have a guest today, Matt. It's going to be me and you, and we got a lot of good stuff to talk about. But when you live in the state of Alabama, of course you got to talk about the Iron Bowl. The Iron Bowl was last week. Alabama won 55-44. Normally we don't talk about Alabama or Auburn. We mostly talk about UNA, but of course UNA season's over, so we can talk about the Iron Bowl. Matt, what was your thoughts on that game? That was an incredible game to watch.
It was a roller coaster. I mean, Auburn kind of fumbles the first play of the game on the lateral, and then Alabama scores 7-0. Auburn gets a field goal, and Alabama scores again 14-3. Looks like Alabama could really blow them out. And then for a long stretch, it was pretty much all Auburn. I mean, they really dominated that game. I mean, they were just taking it to Alabama, and Blake Sims was playing very poorly through some, very, very bad interceptions. Not just interceptions, just just off target on his throws. And, Auburn, I think one thing that hurt Auburn is they kept getting down there and kicking field goals. And I'm not talking about getting to the 20-25 and kicking 40-yard field goals. They're getting inside the 5-yard line and settling for 20-yard field goals. At the end of the day, I think that's what caught up to them. And eventually, Alabama did find their rhythm. And Amari Cooper is just one of the greatest players in college football. You can make an argument he is the best player. They had no answer for him. He was just getting separation. Blake Sims found his confidence, found his rhythm. TJ Yeldon and Derrick Henry started running the ball really effectively. And Auburn's defense struggled all season. It showed up again this week. But Auburn did some good things. They actually outgained Alabama in total yards. I give Auburn a lot of credit, too, for not quitting. When it became 55-36, because it was 36-28 Auburn. And Alabama scores 4 straight touchdowns unanswered, and then Auburn still fights down there and gets a late touchdown with 20 seconds. Never gave up. Just the intensity of that rivalry game. It was a great game. It was kind of a strange game to see in the Iron Bowl. You're used to seeing some Big 12 matchups,
some defensive matchups.
And there wasn't much defense played. I think they had about 1,200 plus yards. But I think at the end of the day, Alabama was the better team as a whole, just more balanced all the way around. Roll Tide on that one, and they deserved the win. And obviously, they can't overlook Missouri this week in the SEC championship game. But once again, I think they are the better team there, and I look forward to seeing them in the playoffs, and I think they'll definitely make it.
Matt, you are exactly right. This game was a kind of a tale of two halves for me. Auburn started out, they have the lead at halftime, but it could have been a lot more. Like you said, they got stopped inside the 5-yard line 2 or 3 times and had to settle for field goals. They kicked, 4 field goals in the first half? If those field goals would have been touchdowns, they would have been in a lot better shape. But Alabama, in crunch time, made a good job of, red zone efficiency, making those stops and forcing them into field goals and making it manageable, and then come out, score 5 straight touchdowns after throwing an interception by Blake Sims in the third quarter. For the second half, starting out with the interception, then 5 straight touchdowns. Alabama just very efficient. Amari Cooper, 200-plus yards receiving. I mean, it was incredible watching Amari Cooper in that game. He just you can't cover him one-on-one. It was incredible to me. Last year, Alabama needed a second. You hear it, need a second. I think this year, Auburn needed a second half and a secondary. I really think so. But
the extension of the second. Well, I never really. It's easier to be that Monday morning quarterback, and I guess that's what we're both doing right now.
Right.
I didn't understand why they didn't help Jonathan Mincy out and some of those other corners and help on Amari. I mean, both big throws down the field. I mean, he just had separation by 5-6 yards, and there was no safety help. Now, granted, TJ Yeldon and Derrick Henry, especially Yeldon, were running the ball so effectively that maybe they didn't want to pull that guy out of the box. But to me, you've got to bracket or double Lamar. You've got to have another guy over there. I don't think Auburn had a corner good enough to stay with him. I mean, I don't know if anybody in the country has a corner good enough to cover him one-on-one, but Auburn certainly didn't have anybody even close enough to play him one-on-one. And they didn't help out a lot either. But, I don't know what Ellis Johnson was thinking. And I know he did get fired the day after the Iron Bowl. And they had a bad year. I don't think he got fired because of the Iron Bowl. I think it was a culmination of a bad season. Defensively, they were not very good all year. But
well, Matt, we did talk about that a lot. Talking about how Auburn's defense had just progressively gotten worse and worse. Especially that, I think what really raised a red flag in my mind was that game against Georgia. They gave up 45 points, couldn't stop the run. They just looked almost atrocious. And Ellis Johnson's a great defensive coordinator, but you just had to wonder what's going on here. And then the Iron Bowl giving up 55 points, allowing Amari Cooper, to get 200-plus yards. And by the way, that did break a record for individual receiving yards in an Iron Bowl. But I think you're right on that. I don't think the Iron Bowl cost him his job. I think it was just accumulation of the whole season and how it was starting to build up. But, you just have to wonder what was going through his mind there. At some points, I think he was double and even triple covering Amari Cooper, but just a lot of blown coverages in that game. And I think that's what allowed Alabama to get back in and eventually take the lead and get the win.
When I look at it, Mike, and I'm not even sure it was a blown coverage. I think of a blown coverage, I think of somebody out of place. I mean, it was just a total mismatch. I mean, Amari would run his route, make one move, and the corner was just frozen.
Well, I guess that's what I mean.
I don't know if he really blew the coverage. I mean, I guess he did, but
well, in a way, like, you had the coverage set up, but then, and Amari, he makes a double move. Like, I saw one play. One of his scoring plays when he caught the post over the middle, he made it look like he's going to run a corner. And whoever was coming, I believe the safety, he just rolled to the sideline. Amari Cooper goes to the middle of the field. He's wide open. I would consider that maybe a blown coverage, but
Yeah.
But it was a good play call.
No, it just looked a lot to me like I think a lot of blown coverage is somebody missing their cues, and to me it just looked like a mismatch.
Well, that too.
I didn't think they could even be in. There was nothing they could physically do to be in position. I don't think the defense was set to really do a good job in the passing game. But like I said, it's easy to sit there and say that, but Alabama was running the ball very easily. One thing that kind of surprised me too in that game, Mike, is early on in the game when Blake Sims was struggling throwing the ball the way he was, why they kept trying to force the ball down the field when they were running the ball for 6, 7, 8 yards a carry. So just hand the ball off.
Exactly.
You're getting first downs.
Nip that time too.
And that's really what got Sims back in rhythm. As they started running the ball effectively, they moved the chains a little bit, and then he was able to find Mario in a big play, and he got his confidence back. And they were just very balanced. Alabama's offense is very, very dangerous. It's usually you think of Alabama's defenses, and they still are good defensively, but they're not as good as they have been in years past. There's a lot more holes in the Alabama defense than there has been in the last 4 or 5 years.
I was very surprised at how much of a defensive matchup this looked like it was going to be, and then it ended up being all offense. 99 points combined by both teams. That's the most in Iron Bowl history combined between both of those teams. So, man, I just thought that was incredible. And you got to go back to Amari Cooper. 13 receptions, 224 yards, and 3 touchdowns. What an incredible performance. And it's hard for anybody to cover him, like you said, Matt, and I definitely agree with you there. And I think he might have catapulted his way into the Heisman contention.
I think he should. I think he may have stamped a plane ticket to New York. I don't think he's going to win it. I think it's the Marcus Mariota Award for this year.
Well, no doubt about that.
I think he's the front runner and should be, but I definitely think that Amari has done enough to get there. I know wide receivers get overlooked a little bit, but he's been absolutely phenomenal. A great player, and Alabama's going to be very tough to beat moving forward.
Yeah, very, very much so. And, man, I got a little distracted there. I think maybe some some warning sirens going on right now. I don't know if you hear that, but kind of throwing me off a little bit. I guess it's giving us an alert that Marcus Mariota really is that guy.
The show must go on.
The show must go on, and we'll get to our Heisman talk in just a little bit. But you got to think Alabama's in the driver's seat right now. Going into the college playoff right here, Alabama, they got to beat Missouri, of course, in the SEC championship to remain number one. But if they lose that game to Missouri, given that happens, we'll say they do lose that game. Do you think they drop to number 4? Do you think they drop out? You think somebody moves ahead?
If they lose, I think they're out. It depends what other teams do. I don't think a 2-loss SEC team will go over. I mean, you also have to look at this. If Missouri beats Alabama, then they both have 2 losses, and Missouri's the SEC champion. Oh, yeah. So I think Missouri would go over Alabama at that point.
Do you think Missouri's too far behind, though, in the rankings?
I do. Like I said, it depends what other teams do. You've got Oregon with 1 loss. You've got Florida State with no losses. TCU 1 loss. Ohio State 1 loss. Baylor 1 loss. And that's all for 1-loss teams. So I don't think a 2-loss SEC team will jump any of the 1-loss teams.
Right.
Now, if Kansas State's got to play, Baylor's got to play Kansas State, they could lose. TCU plays at home against Iowa State. I'm certain they'll win that game. Ohio State's got to play Wisconsin in the Big Ten championship game without JT Barrett, and Vegas has Wisconsin as an early favorite. So certainly Ohio State could lose that game. I don't know. I think if Alabama shows up, I think that's the question. I mean, obviously I trust Nick Saban and his staff. He'll get them prepared and ready to go. But I think Missouri's going to have a little more focus. Alabama's coming off an emotional win. I think they could easily overlook Missouri. When Missouri lost to Auburn last year in the SEC championship game, nobody expected them to be in it this year, but they just kept winning games. And I was one the whole time, said, this team's not that good. They shouldn't be there. Oh, yeah. But at the end of the day, they just kept winning. They were down 14-3 to Arkansas. Came back and won 21-14 with 2 80-plus yard drives to seal that game. So they deserve to be there. But I think their motivation, like I said, could be a little higher. And a lot of things will have to go their way because they are going to be outmatched talent-wise. Mm-hmm. But you just never know. So Alabama's got to be careful. But I do expect Alabama, from just a sheer talent standpoint, to win the football game.
Well, going back to Missouri, Matt, it's hard, for a team to lose to Indiana early in the season. How do you lose to a team like Indiana, then go back and you win the SEC East? Does that mean Indiana could have won the SEC East?
I don't think so.
No, I think there was just one game,
sure.
where they were better than Missouri.
Indiana, by beating Purdue this week, won their first Big Ten game. And the Big Ten's not even that strong. That was their only conference win, and they got it this late in the year.
And they beat Missouri early in the season. So
at Missouri, is on top of that. Now they did have their quarterback, and he's been hurt. Indiana's starting quarterback got hurt a week or two after that game, but no, you can't just isolate one game. At the end of the day, I still don't think Missouri's the best team in the East. I think Georgia's better. I really think Florida's better. I mean, when they lost to Florida, this just still baffles me. This, to me, is the most impressive stat I've seen all season.
Mm-hmm.
Missouri beat Florida 42-13 in the Swamp. Now, that's a beatdown.
That is.
Score was. They had 130 yards of offense. Missouri did. If you have 130 yards of offense, sometimes you don't score 1 point. How do you score 42 points with 130 yards of offense?
A lot of defense and a lot of special teams.
Defense and special teams scored those points, and Florida was really in a kind of a bad spot at that time. But I think Florida's better. I mean, they nudged South Carolina by 1 point. I think you can make an argument South Carolina's better. I think Georgia is the best team in the East.
I agree.
But Missouri did what they needed to do, and I was the one a couple weeks ago saying it's just a matter of time before they lose. Tennessee will beat them. Arkansas will beat them. But hey,
they kept winning.
They kept winning. And like I said, their motivation will be very high. And Matty Mock's a kind of an athletic quarterback. I think he can be tough to deal with for Bama. But Nick Saban and Alabama, they've been there too many times. I just can't see Missouri winning the game.
I might be right there with you, but man, you can't count out Gary Pinkel and that staff. They got to it last year. Nobody expected them to be there. This year, nobody expected them to be there. Like you said, we thought they would lose to Arkansas. We thought that they would lose the game before that. Of course, they beat Florida, beat them down in the Swamp. That was big. And then the win against Arkansas last week was very impressive to me on that Friday game. I was very impressed with the way Missouri won that game and held on at the end there. Matty Mock, a great quarterback. But I think if Missouri wants to beat Bama, as hard as that is, you have to have a good defense to defend Blake Sims, and you got to defend Amari Cooper and stop the run game. T.J. Yeldon and Derrick Henry, a lot of those guys running the ball for Alabama. It's going to be hard to stop. But Missouri, I don't like the matchup. I like Alabama in that game, but I'm not going to count out Missouri at all. And they could win that game. But a lot of questions about the college football playoff right now. If Alabama loses that game, who knows what will happen. But another question in my mind is, what if Florida State loses to Georgia Tech in their championship game for the ACC? Does a one-loss ACC team drop out, or do they stay in at number 4? Or what happens there? I mean, you just got to wonder.
I think the fact that they've already moved them down to number 3 and they're undefeated tells me the committee doesn't like them a whole lot already.
Oh, yeah.
Because, I mean, if I think Florida State should be number 1. Because I'm traditional in the sense that I don't care if you win by 1 or win by 100. It's about winning games.
Well, Matt, I agree with you 100% because I told you about 3 weeks ago, we had talked about this. I said, if you're undefeated in a Power 5 conference, such as ACC, you should definitely be number 1 ahead of a one-loss team. But, as the weeks progressed, you've seen how almost vulnerable Florida State looks.
Yeah, they have, but they find a way to get it done. And if they look vulnerable in the playoffs and they win, well, they're going to be the national champions.
Yeah, right.
So, absolutely, they've looked vulnerable, but they've won their games. And to me, that's what matters. But what I'm saying is the fact that the committee has dropped them to number 3 and they're undefeated over Alabama and Oregon, who have 1 loss, that if they do lose, then no, I think they're going to drop out because I don't think the committee has a lot of respect for them already.
I agree with you there. And I think, you have to win that game if you're Florida State. And you can't even be comfortable with 1 loss there. You're already, like you said, you're already at number 3. The committee they've shown that they like Alabama and Oregon 1-loss teams better, and you're undefeated. So you definitely have to win that game. Jameis Winston's going to have the performance of his life, and I think Georgia Tech will go in, and I think they're going to upset Florida State. I think the luck runs out this coming week. What do you think?
I've been saying that I said Clemson would beat them. Then I said Notre Dame would beat them. And then I never said Louisville would beat them, but then I said Miami would beat them. Then I said Florida would beat them. So no, I'm not picking against them anymore. I'm picking Georgia Tech. I'm picking Florida State to win the ACC. I'm not picking now if they get in the playoff, and they will if they win, and they have to play Oregon in the first round. I do think they'll lose that game because I think Oregon's the best team in the country right now. But no, I'm not picking against them.
Well, man, I'm exactly the opposite. I'm in a college pick'em group on ESPN.com with a lot of my buddies, and I've picked Florida State every week. Picked them against Clemson. I thought they'd win that game. I picked them against Miami. I picked them against Notre Dame. And I got the score exactly right, 31-27. I didn't win the money, but I got it exactly right. And I got all my picks right, and, you get a draw in there. I could have won the money there, but I picked Florida State every week. But this week, there's just something.
Who'd you pick last week, Florida or Florida State?
I picked Florida State. I picked Florida State in every game this year. But this week, I just think it's going to be different. Georgia Tech impressed me a lot. The triple option there, Gary Johnson's very, famous for running that at Georgia Tech.
Paul Johnson.
Paul Johnson. I said Gary. What am I thinking about? Okay. Paul Johnson, running the option there at Georgia Tech. He's been good at that for a while, but this time beating Georgia. By the way, the ACC went 4-0 against the SEC teams. That was very impressive, and that's got to be the first time that's happened in a long time.
I think the Georgia Tech win was impressive, going into Georgia and winning. It's only the second time in 14 years that they've lost that game. I mean, that Georgia has lost to Georgia Tech. I think that was impressive, and I'm giving Georgia Tech all the credit, but I do think Georgia, after Missouri beat Arkansas, they realized they wasn't going to the SEC championship game. I think they were a little deflated, and I think the way they've just dominated Georgia Tech over the years, I think that I don't know how high their mojo was for that game. But the other games, if you look at the other games, it wasn't as impressive as a lot of people would say, and I'll tell you why. Clemson, Florida State, and Louisville were three of the upper echelon ACC teams. Mm-hmm. South Carolina, Florida, and or middle of the pack SEC teams, and Kentucky's a bottom feeder. And Kentucky almost beat Louisville, and they were big underdogs in that game. So every game that was played, Georgia was a favorite over Georgia Tech, but the ACC was favored to win those games. So and I'm not an SEC homer, so I'm not saying this from an SEC standpoint of, hey, we're the best and that's why that happened. But if Clemson would have played Alabama, Florida State would have played Ole Miss, or Louisville would have played Auburn, would it have come out the same way? I don't think so. So I think that it was the best of the ACC versus the middle of the SEC.
And they're all SEC East, by the way.
All
SEC
SEC
keep
East.
that in mind. The SEC
Sure.
West is a lot stronger, in my opinion, than the SEC East, and a lot of people would say
everybody's opinion, I think.
Oh, yeah, that's actually factual. I mean, it could be factual. It's that true. But, man, I just really like Georgia Tech. The way they played against Florida or against Georgia last week, getting that win, very impressive the way they did it, too, in overtime. I like Georgia Tech to go in and beat a vulnerable Florida State. They find a way to win every week. Don't see it happening this week. Georgia Tech gets the win, and I think Florida State may drop out if they lose. I can see them getting a 4 seed, but if the committee already has them at 3 as an undefeated team, they could drop out.
Yeah, I think they definitely drop out. But yeah, I'm going to pick Florida State to continue to win. I think they'll win. Or I've been picking against them. I'm picking them to win now. And so maybe you're on the right track. You've been picking Florida State. Now you're picking against them. So now that I'm picking them, it'll probably
we'll see.
The trend will probably continue. I'll continue to be wrong. You'll continue to be right. But
we'll see. We'll just have to see how that goes. But Matt, this is my prediction right now. I think Alabama stays at number 1, and I do think Oregon is the best team in the nation. I really think Oregon is better than Alabama, but I think those are the 2 best teams in the nation. Very close, in my opinion. But Oregon's offense is just very hard to stop. When you throw 2 interceptions throughout the whole season, that's very impressive. Marcus Mariota, the best player in the country. Scott Frost has done a great job as the offensive coordinator there. I've been very impressed with Oregon. I think they stay at number 2. I think they beat Arizona. I don't think they spank them, but I think it's close. I think they beat them by maybe 10 or 14, a couple touchdowns. I think Oregon wins that game, though. They get the number 2. I think Florida State's going to lose, so, I think Florida State will be 3 this week, of course, and then TCU will probably move into number 4. That's my projection right now, I think. But if Florida State loses to Georgia Tech, I think they drop out. I think TCU moves into 3. I think Kansas State could beat Baylor, and I think Wisconsin will beat Ohio State. So then, where do you go from there?
My mind it's almost painful to look at those scenarios. No doubt about it. I'm gonna ride out the favorites. I think it's gonna be Alabama, Oregon, Florida State, and TCU is gonna be your final 4. And I think Alabama playing TCU in the Superdome. I think Alabama will get the win. Also, a lot more experience in big games. I think the Oregon Florida State game would take place in Pasadena in the Rose Bowl, so it should be a pro-Oregon crowd. Even I think the locals that attend that game will be pulling for the Pac-12, the West Coast team. So I would like Oregon. Actually, I think Oregon would beat Florida State handily. I think if Florida State made those mistakes against Oregon's the team that would just – their offense is too good. They would get you so far behind you couldn't come back.
No doubt.
They wouldn't do what Florida did and kick 2 or 3 field goals and throw a 90-yard pick 6. I mean, if you gave them that many opportunities on the short side of the field, they're just going to score and they're going to be up 28-0, and it's going to be too late to. And
that's the way it is.
So I think and their offense is so good. I think they would score on Florida State. I think Oregon would score on anybody. I'm not saying they can't be beat, but I don't think it'd be their offense is the reason why they're going to lose the game. So I think Oregon. I think it's going to be Oregon-Alabama. I think that's the dream matchup. I think that's the matchup everybody wants. I know it's the matchup I want to see, and I think Oregon's going to be your national champions.
Matt, I'm gonna have to agree with you. I think it will be Oregon and Alabama in the national championship. I think it's going to be a little closer in that game. That could be an offensive shootout. The way Alabama's been playing and the way Oregon's been playing.
I think it is going to be.
I'm going to take Alabama in the national championship, though, but I'm going to say it's very close. I'm going to say it goes to overtime, even. I'm going to say it's a 60-point game. That's going to be incredible to watch. But, it's going to be really tough to stop Oregon.
Sometimes we do think a lot alike, Mike. I did a little excerpt in the Floor Allen this week. Me, Dustin, Pollard, a guy named Caden, and Darian Pippins, we all picked our 4 teams that were going to make the playoffs, and we broke it down from there. It's going to come out Thursday, and I picked Alabama to Oregon, and I picked Oregon beating Alabama in overtime. And so when you just say overtime, it's kind of funny.
I picked Bama in overtime.
Well, I know, but just the fact that we both think overtime, that tells you how close we think the game will be.
Oh, yeah, and, the other 2 teams, I think Oregon would definitely handle Florida State if that matchup ever happened. If Alabama ends up playing TCU, that could be a pretty close game. TCU, I've been impressed with their offense. Boykin, a great quarterback. And, that brings me to my next point. We're going to talk about the Heisman a little bit. I know you do a little Heisman talk sometimes, and I don't guess y'all did that in the Floor Allen, but that would have been interesting to, who's your top 5 right now for the Heisman? Mariota's got to be the favorite. But, who comes in after that?
I think Melvin Gordon second. I think what he's done, not just running for over 2,200 yards or whatever he's done thus far, but I think he's averaging almost 8 yards a carry doing it, 7.9 or something like that. So, he's just been so impressive. He's been Wisconsin's offense. In the 2 losses they had, a close loss to Northwestern and a very close loss to LSU, combined 10 points between both losses, he was well over 100 yards in both games.
Right.
So he's been his only game under 100 yards was against Western Illinois. And I think that was just
they took him out early.
They took him really early. And so, I think he's just been very dominant. Obviously, he had that Heisman moment with 408 yards rushing through 3 quarters against
Nebraska.
The funny thing is, I think it's going to kind of hurt him with that being the Heisman moment. He beat a 15-year record, but he got broken a week later, so he don't even hold the record anymore.
Right.
But I think him and Todd Gurley are the 2 best running backs in football, and obviously Gurley got hurt.
I agree.
So I think Gordon's right there, number 2. I think Amari Cooper is number 3. Very dynamic. You can make an argument he's the best player in college football. The reason I would say Mariota is because I think the quarterback position is just a lot more important than the wide receiver position because everything goes through the quarterback. And if Blake Sims is playing bad, Amari Cooper's not going to have a good game. A good quarterback, he's going to dictate if he's playing well or not. So I think Cooper has just had a great year as a wide receiver, over 1,300 yards receiving, over 100 receptions. Blake Sims has dialed it up to him often when they were in trouble, and he's came through. So he's 3. Number 4 would be Trevon Boykin. I think he's done enough. His numbers actually are right there with RG3's, maybe a little better, and even has less losses than RG3 when he won it a few years ago. But you have to be careful with comparing numbers because the offenses, the numbers are just getting higher and higher and higher every year. But I think Boykin's been really good. I've got him 4th. And JT Barrett, he got hurt, but I think he was kind of in the mix at 5 maybe. So I'd probably still throw him 5. I think he's done enough to hold that. He played the full season, got hurt late in the Michigan game. So.
Well, Matt, you're right. We do kind of think alike there. I think we're kind of identical, but I think I might have a little different at number 5 there. But, you got to still consider Dak Prescott. He went 22 for 37, 282 yards and lost to Ole Miss. Was still impressive there. He's had almost 3,000 yards. I think he's 4 yards away from throwing for 3,000 yards. So he's close there, but he's not really in my top 5. But Melvin Gordon, I believe he got hurt in that game last week with Wisconsin and Minnesota, I believe it was. But he should be back, I think. But,
he is.
But yeah, like I heard Lou Holtz say, if JT Barrett gets hurt, then you go ahead and take away Wisconsin's best player. But I think he was just trying to make a joke there. But Melvin Gordon's clear number 2 for me, of course. Mariota being number 1. 36-2 touchdown to interception ratio. That's the clear favorite. Number 2, definitely Melvin Gordon there. He has 2,260 on rushing yards there, 2,200 rushing yards, and 26 touchdowns. So that's very impressive. Boykin's probably going to be my number 3. I think I'll put Boykin over Cooper right now. Boykin, over 3,000 passing yards, 26 touchdowns, 6 interceptions. He's really led TCU to a great season. I've been very impressed with him. Cooper definitely my number 4, and I think Cooper is the clear favorite to win the Bedniark, or what was it?
Bolitnikov.
Say that again.
Bolitnikov.
The Bolitnikov. I don't know what I said. I tried something there.
Yeah,
It
it wasn't the Bolitnikov.
the Bolitnikov.
Think about the barnyard.
The barn burner. I don't know where I went with that, but but he's my clear favorite to win that. And then my 5, I would probably go JT Barrett right now. I think JT Barrett, even though he got hurt, he's just had an incredible season up to this point. He's out. He's probably out for the season, but 2,800 passing yards, 34 touchdowns. You got to think he's still in there. I'd put him at 5, but another guy that's really on the rise that we're not even talking about, Tevin Coleman, the running back for Indiana. Just even though they hadn't won a lot of games, they did beat Missouri, but they hadn't won a lot of games. I think he said that their win last week was their first Big Ten win against Purdue. So, when you don't win games, you don't get noticed a lot. But he's had a lot of yards for Indiana, had a great season. And, of course, Jameis Winston, almost an atrocious performance last week. He kept them in the game, but 4 interceptions, 3 in the first quarter. That raises red flags about, his stats. So.
Yeah, Winston's definitely not a Heisman contender for me. But one thing you said earlier about Mariota, and he's thrown for 3,470 yards, almost 3,500.
Yep.
He's rushed for, I don't know the exact number, but I think right around 600, maybe just a hair short of 600.
You mean rushing?
Yeah.
I got 367 with 4 touchdowns.
Mariota?
Well, that might be.
No, those aren't the right stats because I know he's got 11
Okay,
rushing
I'm looking at
touchdowns.
somebody else. That's right. I was looking at Melvin Gordon, I think, but
No, Ward's got
whoa.
more than 300 yards rushing
Boykin.
too.
Maybe Boykin.
Maybe.
I don't know. I wrote the wrong stat there, but something else about Mariota. His completion rate, almost 70%.
And that's the thing is, to me, it's not just the fact that he's run for almost 600 yards and 11 touchdowns. He's thrown for almost 3,500 yards and 36 touchdowns. He completes at 68.8%, I believe, 68.9, so almost 70%. But 36 touchdowns to 2 interceptions. As much as this guy is called upon to make plays for this Oregon offense, he doesn't turn the ball over. I mean, he just doesn't turn it over. I think he has more fumbles than he does interceptions. I think he's got 3 fumbles on the year. So he's just he controls the ball. He doesn't make the wrong decisions. He makes the right decisions. And I think that more than the over 4,000 total yards, as impressive as that is, I think the 36 to 2. That's just a stat you don't see very often.
That's really what wins it for me. The 36 to 2. And ESPN's QB rating, I know they have a way of keeping up with QB rating every week, but throughout the season, Mariota, a 92.9 out of 100. That is impressive to me because Boykin, who's right behind him as a quarterback in the Heisman race, I think his was like 76. So Mariota, that tells you a lot about him. That ratio for 1, we've talked about that just this whole time, but Mariota's been in there every year as a Heisman contender, but just could never win it. But I'm not going to say that's the reason he should win it this year. But I just think the stats are baffling. That's an amazing stat, 36 and 2. I can't talk enough about it. But that QB rating too, 92.9. That's incredible. And I definitely believe Mariota is the clear favorite to win. Could win it by more than any margin. I mean, I don't think Melvin Gordon's a great player, but I don't know if he's close to Mariota right now.
Yeah, I think it's Mariota's trophy at this point. Jordan would have to run for 300 and then beat Ohio State, and Mariota had to throw 3 picks and have a terrible game and lose to Arizona again. That's the only thing I think that could flip this thing around. Yeah,
it might be more than 300 though for Melvin Gordon because that's an average week for him. But if he had maybe 500 or something, that might change it a little bit. But I can't see Mariota having another bad game.
Well, he hasn't had a bad game. Even their loss to Arizona, he threw for 273 yards, 2 touchdowns, and no interceptions in their loss. So I haven't even seen him. He hasn't had a bad game all year. He hasn't had one, even though they lost that one game. It wasn't because of him. So I mean, he's had 2 picks, and those were separated. Those wasn't even the same game. So I mean, you say another bad game. I don't think he's had a bad game. Every game's been good. They just had one bad loss. But I don't know if it was that bad of a loss.
It's not even a bad loss. Arizona's in the championship game,
and
so
they
that's
were
not
10
a bad
and 2.
loss.
But losing at home, because Arizona did beat them the year before. Mark Helfrich has lost 3 games in 3 years at Oregon, or 3 games in 2 years at Oregon.
To Arizona.
And one of them was to Stanford, and the other 2 were to Arizona. I think he's like 22-3. And so I have to wonder. The one thing that makes me think Arizona has a chance, I think Oregon's going to be hungry for revenge. But I thought when they played them on Thursday night this year, they'd be hungry for revenge at home after losing at Arizona last year, and they still lost again. it could be a very tough matchup for Oregon. So I think Arizona's a live dog in that game.
Oh, yeah, I think Oregon would have been a lot better off playing UCLA, but when UCLA got beat and Arizona, of course, beat Arizona State and made it in there, I was like, that's not going to be good for Oregon. I think they probably would have rather played UCLA. I think they would have really beat UCLA, but
I think they're hungry. I mean, I think those guys are I think they're happy to have Arizona. I think they want Arizona, and I do like that fact. I mean, when you get a team that says, "Hey, we want to play them," because I've heard a lot of comments. I read a lot of Oregon blogs, and a lot of those comments are, "We want Arizona. That's who we want to play.
Oh yeah,
we want to show them. We want some revenge." And I like when players downplay. Oh, we're not thinking about revenge. I like when I hear a guy say, "I want some revenge. I want to go beat these guys for beating me." I like that. I don't think that's a negative thing.
I know with UNA, if we would have had a chance to play Delta State again, I know we would have wanted revenge on them. And then of course Valdosta State wanted revenge on us, and they beat us out of the playoffs. So
they got it.
And it's hard to beat a team twice. You hear that all the time. So you got to think Oregon is the clear favorite, definitely the favorite, but don't count out Arizona. Arizona just seems to have Oregon's number, and I think Oregon's the favorite. I think Oregon will win, but don't count out the Wildcats. I think the Wildcats will really give them a run for their money. I like that running back, Carey, I think's his name.
Kadeem Carey?
Kadeem Carey. Very good running back, and I think he was an early season Heisman contender, but, he's really good for that team, and I think if they can run the ball effectively with him, they will have a chance, but if they get behind, they're going to have to throw the ball, and it's going to be a little tough to keep up with Mariota and Oregon. But we got a lot of NCAA talk in there. Talked about the playoff a little bit. Talked about the Iron Bowl even. But I think the fans might want to hear a little bit about high school football because, of course, this is a high school football podcast. So maybe we should go talk about high school a little bit.
All right,
what do you think?
Let's do it. Let's do the rundown of the state championship games.
Well, first, let's start with Florence. So I kind of wanted to talk about Florence real quick because, man, I hated that they lost that game, 35-21. They really gave Clay Chalkville a run, and I think it was pretty close in the fourth quarter. I think they were only down, a field goal or a touchdown? Or
field goal. They were down 21-10, scored, and went for two and got it, made it 21-18. And then Chalkville increased their lead to 28-18. And then Florence answered with a field goal of their own, 28-21. But then Clay went down there and scored late in the game and put it away 35-21. So, yeah, the final score was not as indicative of the game. I mean, it wasn't like they just kind of got a big lead and Florence stayed behind. It was 7-7 at halftime. So it was a lot more scoring in the second half. I think Clay Chalkville found their rhythm. But, it was close. Florence had their chance, and you just got to tip your hat to Clay. They're just a very, very good football team.
Oh, yeah, the best team in the state in 6A for sure. And Florence had a great chance to win that game. But, Matt, they're going to be losing a lot of guys. Florence, of course, they're going to be losing the quarterback, Blake Hawkins. We've talked a lot about him. He's a 3-star transferring in from Tishomingo. He's done a great job in this offense for Florence. And, of course, they're going to be losing him. They're going to be losing Roland Adams, the running back. They're all seniors here. William Barnett, the wide receiver, he's came along a lot lately for Florence. He's been the favorite target of Hawkins, towards the end of the season. Barnett's going to be graduating. D. Smith, a guy on the defensive side of the ball, and Keaton Henderson, both of those guys on defense. One of them's a safety, the other one's, of course, the middle linebacker. Anderson committed to Alabama. Both of those guys will be graduating. B.J. Oakley, another guy, the safety, he's going to be graduating. Just so many guys that Florence is losing. And it's hard to determine, who they got coming back. But, last year, a lot of people said Florence is losing a lot of people, because the quarterback that went to Ole Miss, I had his name on, I can't even think of his name, but that'll come back to me. Yeah, we'll come back to that. But Florence just lost a lot of guys, had a quarterback go to Ole Miss. And the year before that, I had Nicholas Brown. He's at Mississippi State now, kind of leading that defense. And so many guys, just every year they seem to just refill and have another guy just come in. And one of those guys that I'm looking forward to refill is the quarterback behind Blake Hawkins. He played a little bit in the Starkville game. Derek Thurkill. And I think he's a junior, going to be a senior. He may be the one to step in and take the reins at quarterback. And from what I've seen from him, he may be leading this offense and could do a pretty good job.
Yeah, well, Florence seems to have a good pipeline of talent out there, so I think they'll be fine. They had a great year. They really did. Last year they got to the quarterfinals. They were knocked out by Hoover. This year they got to the semifinals. They were knocked out by Clay. Hoover went on to win the state championship last year after they knocked Florence out, and I think Clay will go on to win the state championship this year. So got really deep, and you could make an argument, even though they didn't get to the state championship game, they could have been the second best team in 6A for 2 years in a row. But great season by Florence, just came up a little bit short.
Yeah, you're exactly right. It just seems to happen that way every year. They seem to get just better and better. Quarterfinals to Hoover, lost by 1 point, and then so close against Clay Chapel in the semifinals, almost made state for the first time in school history since the merger of Bradshaw and Coffee. But I don't know if you were around for that, man. You might have still been in Mobile at that point, but that happened a few years ago. But well, more than a few, probably over a decade. But well, you know what I mean there. But man, Florence is just getting better and better and better. And then next year's going to be a question mark. But, you know, we don't really know the guys that are going to refill. But I'm looking forward to seeing Florence. I think they've really built a program. J.B. Wallace, great job in his first year, going 11-4, I believe it was, and almost, you know, making it to state. Very good season for Florence. I like what they got building right there. And we'll see how they do next year. And but, Matt, we're in the state championship now. 14 teams from 7 classes going to be down in Auburn on Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday competing for state championships. And 2 of those teams, Hoover and Madison Academy, 7A and 3A, are going to be going for a 3rd straight national or state championship. Sorry, I didn't mean to say national. State championships, and could very well do it. But let's start with Hoover, Matt. Hoover's taking on Prattville. Prattville's 3-2 all time against Hoover. Of course, all these games have been played in the state championship. Hoover and Prattville's got a little state championship rivalry going on here. I think Hoover won in 04 and 09, and then Prattville came in. They won in 06, 08, and the last one in 2011. So Prattville kind of leading the series right now. But, Matt, this might be Hoover's year. I don't know. What do you think about that?
Well, I haven't had a chance to look at both teams very close. I know that year in and year out they're both very, very good. They've been at the top of 6A, and now they both moved up to 7A, and they're at the top of that as well. You know, at the end of the day, it's one of those things, you know, unless I have a real strong gut feeling towards a team playing Hoover, I'm usually going to pick Hoover, and nothing really jumps out to me to say, hey, this is going to be Prattville's year, so I'm with you. I think Hoover, they're both going to put some points on the board, but I'm going to say Hoover 38, Prattville 28.
Yeah, I'm going to say high-scoring game. I'm going to say 45-41, Hoover gets the win. Key player for Hoover, they got a running back now by the name of Bradwick Shaw. He gets all the carries for Hoover most of the time. Man, he can just run the ball and pound it. I watched a little bit of film on match preps and stuff like that. And, that's the kid that really stood out to me for Hoover. I think Hoover is just kind of a pipeline of talent. So there you go, Hoover. I'm picking Hoover as well. So we got one together. 6A, Saraland taking on Clay Chapel. I think we're both going to go the same direction here. I think we could both probably say that last week was probably technically the state championship with Florence and Clay Chapel. But Saraland, another pretty good team. They beat Spanish Fort last week, 14-10. Spanish Fort, of course, the 5A champion from last year, really took it to Muscle Shoals in the state championship last year. So Spanish Fort's a good team, but Saraland beat them, of course, to make it to the state championship. These teams have never played each other, so we don't really know much about the matchup. But I do know Clay Chapel in the game last week against Florence. They have a very good quarterback. Clay Chapel's quarterback, Pingrone, I believe is his name, Tyrell Pingrone or something like that. I think he's a Mr. Football contender in the state of Alabama. I think he's the leading quarterback right now, of course. Kerryon Johnson, the leader.
Is he committed to anybody?
I think he's uncommitted. I think I read that he was uncommitted. But I know he's in there somewhere. He's a very good player, and I think he'll be the key to this game. I say Clay Chapel wins. What do you think?
Well, you know, back in my day playing football 11, 12 years ago in high school, Saraland's about 15 minutes up the road from me. But Saraland High School didn't exist. Saraland's only about 4 or 5 years old, so they're a brand new school. You had Satsuma and Viger up that way, and you know, Viger's smaller now, Satsuma's a lot smaller, and Saraland just kind of came in there and just took a bulk of both students from both schools, and they're bigger. I think Viger's now 5A and Satsuma's 4A, and Satsuma was 6A back when I was playing. Mm-hmm. So was Viger, and they've both fallen down a little bit. But man, Saraland's obviously doing some really good things. So I haven't been in the Mobile area, but Mobile is my hometown, and I love Mobile, so I'm going to pull for Saraland's 10 miles north of Mobile. You know, you get out of North Mobile, you're right in the Saraland. So I can be honest, I'll be rooting for Saraland in that community to bring home a state championship. I think it'll be very special. My sister lives in Saraland, so I always get to go home and see her. Get a little off topic from the game now, but
well, hey, that's a little interesting right there, Matt. That you know a little bit about Saraland, and of course you didn't get to play them, but you've played against teams that have been compiled from them. So.
Yeah, from their area. So, but I think Clay's too good. I think the winner of the Clay Florence game was going to win the state championship. I'll be surprised if it's real close. I think Clay Chalkville wins, 45-17. I just think they're head and shoulders. I thought they were the best team. I thought Florence had a chance to beat them. I thought Florence had a special year, and I picked Florence to win a close one. But I think those were the two best teams in 6A, and I think that that Saraland's just going to have a hard time competing. But they're a new school. They've been around less than 5 years, and they're in a state championship game already. So I think that program's on the up and up as well. It should. Hopefully it'll be a little closer than I think it will be, but I like Clay Chalkville to win big.
Well, Matt, I do think it'll be a little closer, actually. I think Saraland, they've had a good run from what I've seen, in the playoff brackets, but beating Spanish Fort, who's a very good team, that really raises my eyebrows there. Maybe Saraland's a pretty good team. Maybe they're a pipeline for talent. I don't know. We'll see. I used two words that you really like there.
Was that an eyebrow raiser?
I think it was, and they're a pipeline, so... Man, me and Matt, we can go on and on about my accent. I still got a little work to do on that, but hey, Saraland beating Spanish Fort, that raised an eyebrow for me. I think they could really pose a threat to Clay Chalkville.
I thought Spanish Fort was going to win the game. I really too, but
I think Spanish Fort might have been hurt from injuries. I think they might have had a few injuries, but I still think Saraland is a very good team, and to beat Spanish Fort, that's a big deal for that program. You said they've only been a school with 4 or 5 years, only been a team there. I still think Clay Chalkville wins, but I'm going to keep it a little closer. I may say 35-28.
Wow.
Yeah, I may go that close. But I think Pengrove, too much Clay Chalkville in that game. Clay Chalkville, in my opinion, the best team in the state, but Saraland will be motivated. Saraland's not a bad team. I'm not going to count them out. Let's go to 5A, Matt. St. Paul's and Pleasant Grove. Don't know if we really expected Pleasant Grove to be there as a 3 seed, but they did beat Russellville in the first round and beat them pretty bad. I think, 36-14? So
something like that.
Yeah, something like that. So Pleasant Grove, a pretty good team, from the Birmingham area. The Spartans, of course, going to take on St. Paul's. That was my pick early in the season, or early, in the playoffs to win the championship down in Mobile there. Coach Mask from the former Colbert County coach is down there building a program at St. Paul's. A.J. McCarron's came from there. Jay Coker's came from there. A couple of guys at UNA right now are from there. That's a pipeline of talent.
Well, I don't know if he's building a program. I think he's just continuing to lead an already built program. They've been very good for a long time. Like you mentioned, A.J. McCarron played there. Jacob Coker, who's now at Alabama, should be the starting quarterback next year for Alabama, played there. Guy by the name of Chevis Jackson played there. He starting quarterback for LSU for 3 years. He played for the Falcons a while. I don't know if he's still in the league.
Sure.
There was some other LaRon Landry, who is a starting safety in the league. He played there. They put out. He starts for the Colts at safety right now.
Yeah,
started for LSU. They put some real talent. They've got some real talent come through there. So I think that program's been established for quite a while now. But I like St. Paul's. I think the Pleasant Grove's one of those teams that had a really good run and probably has overachieved and got hot at the right time. And because of their work and what they've done on the field, they get rewarded with a trip to Auburn to get to experience the Super 7, which I think half the thing about going to the state championship game is that experience of being, the media outlets are so much bigger for these high school kids than they are at any other time during the year. It's a very unique experience to get to play in a state championship game. And I'm saying that from only a spectator's point of view. Unfortunately, I never got that opportunity to play for a state championship. But I think St. Paul is just the class of that game. I think they're a lot more talented, a lot better. And once again, I don't think that'll be a very competitive game either. I'm going to say 41-14, St. Paul's.
Yeah, I think it's all St. Paul's here. But Pleasant Grove has really made a run, and they came out of a tough region, from the Birmingham area. I think they had Parker and Ramsey in that same region. I think Region 5 is what it was in Class 5A. So Pleasant Grove, not a bad team, and they just lost in the regular season, but got hot in the playoffs. Pleasant Grove used to be, I believe they used to be at 4A, moved up to 5A, and so this might be their first year in 5A. I'm not sure about that for sure, but I think that's right. I think it's their first year in 5A. I talked to somebody about it that played at Pleasant Grove. Actually, the guy preaches at my church, so he played at Pleasant Grove. He was the defensive end there, so I don't know. Pleasant Grove's a pretty good team, but St. Paul's is the class of 5A. I think they're the best team in the state at 5A. I think they win this game. I'm going to say 42-24. 42-24. I'm going to give it to St. Paul's there. I think they win another one. Deschler and Leeds in the 4A matchup. We got Deschler in there from Tuscumbia, and they could be taking on one of the best teams in the entire state, Leeds. Leeds is a very impressive team. Of course, they beat Madison Academy in first game of the season by a field goal. So Leeds, they've been established. They made the state championship in 3A last year, now moving up to 4A. Deschler, don't count them out. They've been on an amazing run coming out of 4A Region 8. They beat the teams like Wilson and Central, Elkmont. And then they get in the playoffs. They got to play tougher teams. Hamilton, go in there, almost lose, 22-21, barely won the game. Next week they go and beat Sacs 36-14. Sacs a very good team, but knock them out. Then they go beat Fayette County 20-14. They're late in the game. Then they go and they really take it to Cordova and win handily. What was it, 45-22 or?
So I mean, it wasn't close.
It went close. So Deschler has really made a run. Sam Howard, one of the best quarterbacks in the entire state, in my opinion. Sam Howard's done a great job at Deschler, and then that whole defense. Taj Bates, kind of the leader there at cornerback, and they've got a lot of other guys. Bird that runs the ball, and Deschler, don't count them out, but Leeds is a very tough team. Number 1 in the state right now. Matt, you got a prediction on that game?
I think Deschler's having a very special year. I kind of all year I kind of touted them as a team that could make a run at a state championship game.
You're right.
And then after their first round game against Hamilton, where they were down 21-14, they score, had some kicking game woes and go for 2, and win the game 22-21. I pick against them in the second round, they dominate. Pick against them in the third round, they win. So I jumped back on their bandwagon last week and picked them to win. And I think they've had a real special year, and I think they've really rallied around. I think the guys have rallied around themselves, their teammates, their brothers, their coaches, Coach Statham, Coach Ritters, the DC out there. And I think they've had a special year. And I would like to say that I think it'll continue this week and they'll beat Leeds, but I think they're just too far outmatched. UMS Wright, very, very good team. Coach Terry Curtis, many national championships. Still one of the best coaches in high school football. Definitely going to be a Hall of Famer if he's not already in. I don't know how the situation works. And they went and beat UMS at UMS last week, 28-7. Nobody does that to UMS. And so I think Leeds is just a very, very good team. I haven't got to watch them, but I've read about them and I've seen what they've done, and they've just decimated their competition. And I think Deschler's good, but I think they have weaknesses. And I think they're going to get exploited this week. I think Deschler's going to stay competitive, but I'm going to say 45-34. I think they're going to score. I think Leeds is just going to score too much. So I think Deschler will give a very valiant effort, play very hard, but I think at the end of the day they're just a little too far outmatched to win the game.
I'm right there with you, man. I picked Leeds early in the season. I thought Leeds would be the better team. I thought they would beat UMS Wright in the semifinal. I know you picked UMS Wright, and that was we both had the right semifinals teams there, but we didn't really expect Deschler to make this kind of run. But you tapped it early in the season, and then after 22-21, you're like, ooh, that's a little scary. I don't know if I want to pick them against Sacs, but they go and beat Sacs. They go and beat Fayette County. So Deschler on a run right now. Deschler a very good team, and they've really rallied around Coach Statham. And I know your old roommate Colby Lang, who works with me at UNA football. I know he was saying he played for Coach Statham at Collinwood, so he's like, oh yeah, Deschler's gonna win it all. Deschler's gonna win it all. And when he said that, I was like, I don't know if I can believe that right now. They're going to have to run into some of these tough teams eventually. They might get knocked down, but I don't know. Like, they've really made a good run, so Colby might have been right on that one. But, hey, I mean, that's the way it is sometimes. But Deschler are a good team. They really rallied around their coach. And even in the loss of Jake Linville, I think that really helped motivate them. I know they're going to do that for him. They're going to give a valiant effort, I believe. But like you said, too much Leeds, I really do think it'll be like that. Anytime you can beat a Madison Academy, that tells you that you are a great team. So Leeds, I believe, gets the win here. The home of Charles Barkley, by the way. I'm sure you knew that, but I'm going to take Leeds here, and I'm going to take them 42-27. I'm going to go. I'm going to go with them. Deschler, they've been to a lot of state championships here recently. I think the last time was 2011 they got beat. And then I think they went in 08 or 07. And they went a couple, I think they've been 4 or 5 times since 1999, and they won in 1999. But that was the last time they won. And I think they're 3-1 all time against Leeds. And I think the last time Leeds beat them was 2001. So there's been a little matchup there. And Deschler holds the all-time record, but I see Leeds winning this one, man. 3A, Madison Academy in Dale County. I know we're getting down in the lower A's, and I know You didn't say, you said you probably didn't follow as much 2A and 1A, and neither did I, but Madison Academy's 3A there. We followed them all year. They've played Colbert County, they've played Lauderdale County. They're in that Class 3A region. Ain't that so tough? Madison Academy has dominated, other than Leeds, they've dominated every opponent that they've played. I mean, even Lauderdale County beat them 34-7. They beat them handily. Madison Academy is the cream of the crop. And they're going to be taking on Dale County, who is another really good team. Dale County, they have another Mr. Football contender. They have a good running back, Jamarius Henderson. And by the way, let me say this about Henderson, the running back there for Dale County. He broke the AHSAA record. I got it right that time. I know you're getting more and more impressed with the way I'm saying it. AHSAA, single season record for rushing with 3,267 yards. He broke a record set, I think, in 01 or something like that. But I think Aliceville had a running back that set that record. But he broke that record. So he holds the record for all-time rushing yards in the state of Alabama. So Dale County, they're gonna I don't know, that's gonna be a great matchup. I might actually watch that game. It's gonna be Carry On versus Henderson. That'll be a good game to watch, Matt. But what do you think's gonna happen?
Well, they're going to need a lot of Henderson. A lot of Henderson if they want to win this game. I think Madison Academy, I was really surprised that Glencoe played them as well as they did, but you actually called that.
I did.
Or you sent me a text message that night on the air and said, hey, this team is this Glencoe team. They run a really good read option, and I think they can compete with Madison Academy. And they lost 31-28 in a very good football game. But I think Madison Academy is the class of 3A. They have been in the last 2 years. Their one loss was against Leeds by a field goal, who looks to be the class of 4A this year. They've really, outside of that game against Glencoe, they've really dominated everybody else, even through their region, which I think was a very good region. They dominated Lauderdale County. They dominated Colbert County. They just dominated everybody. And I think they'll continue to roll. I think Henderson may be a great runner, but Madison Academy will probably stack the box. And I think they have enough. In high school, you could say, well, we're going to stack the box. But one really, really good athlete at some of these lower level high schools can just change everything. And I think Madison Academy is too good. I think that by them stacking the box, it's going to matter. You stack the box with a bunch of kind of smaller, not the most athletic kids, really good running backs still just going to run right through you. So I think Madison Academy will try to take him away and probably do a pretty good job at it and force him to throw the ball. And I don't think Dale County can do that. I think Madison Academy will score. It will. Once again, I'm picking a lot of high-scoring games. I think it'll be another one. I'm going to say 38-24 Madison Academy. Be the 3A state champions 3 years in a row.
Yeah, I think it's going to be a lot more, or I think it's going to be a bigger difference than that. I think Madison Academy wins this game 35-14. I really think, like you said, they're going to stack the box and try to stop Henderson. They probably will do that. And I think Henderson he may get a couple scores, but I don't think he does much in this game. I think Madison Academy's defense shuts him down. They're going to stack the box. And then if Dale County tries to do that, Madison Academy's got a few more weapons. They got a Malik Miller out there who can run the ball, who can catch the ball. They could throw either one of those guys, Carry On or Malik. They can put them running back or wide receiver. So, and those guys can play both sides of the ball and make stops. So, it's time to stuff two guys like that and just a solid team all around. Madison Academy is going to be hard to beat. I think Madison Academy does get a third ring for the third straight year and could even do it again. They're just that good. And I don't know, but you got to be impressed with Dale County, how they beat Gordo last week. I think they won on a Hail Mary pass, too, 32-28 to beat Gordo. And I think Gordo is probably one of those teams a lot of people thought would be playing Madison Academy in the championship. Now, like I said, I did call it. I said Glencoe would be the team that beat Madison Academy if anybody was going to do it. But Madison Academy's head and shoulders above everybody. They beat Glencoe, 31-28? So, very close. I think that might have been the state championship, in my opinion, of 3A. But Dale County's going to give them a run. But I'm going to stick to my pick, 35-14 Madison Academy. Real quickly, we'll just go ahead and throw a score out here for 2A. Fife taking on Elba. Both of these teams are undefeated. They're ranked 1 and 2, respectively. Fife is ranked number 1. And I said this earlier, Fife beat Tanner, Tanner's won the state championship 2 times in a row. They're the defending state champions, so but they're not going to defend it a third time, so I think Fife's going to win this game. This is the first time these teams have met, but listen to the points per game. Fife scores 52 points per game. Elba scores 40 points per game. I think the score is high. I'm going to say really high here. I'm going to go 49-42.
I'm going to say 52-40.
Just because of the points per game.
That's right. I'm going with 5, 52-40.
All right. Well, hey, that's a good basis for your pick. So, I think 5 wins this.
There's an old rule. If you can't name one player on either team, you probably have, you're probably not going to be real good at trying to pick a winner.
It's hard to make an educated guess there, but if you look at the points per game, then there you go. You're in good shape.
I'm going 5, baby.
There you
Let's
go.
roll.
I'm going 5 too. Let's go 5.
But you know what? Let me say this real quick.
Okay.
Because I'm going to tune in and do my best to watch all these games. You obviously have the 7A game Wednesday night because they've had a bye week last week. They have less teams in the playoffs. And then, I think you have the 1, 2, and 3A Thursday and the 4, 5, and 6A Friday. And I'm going to do the best I can. I've got to do, I got some studying I've got to do, but I'm going to do the best I can to watch them. But you hear a game like that, 2 teams 14-0. I mean, just by knowing that alone gives me good excitement for the game. I mean, it sounds like it's going to be a very good game. It looks like some high-powered offenses, so I'm excited to watch that game. So just because I don't know much, I want to make sure I'm not undercutting the game. I think it's going to be a phenomenal football game. They just haven't been in our area. They're not real big schools, so I haven't really kept my eye on them that well. But I certainly don't want to underscore that game. I think it's going to be a great football game.
Well, Matt, like you said, you would definitely watch all those games, and the only thing keeping me from going down there is the fact that I have finals and I have to study. So, but I'm going to try to watch all those games too. And Fife is going to be a great game to watch. Fife and Elba, both undefeated, just kind of like two trains crashing into each other. And Fife, of course, from the Sand Mountain area, so that's a little close to us, but not quite in our area. But Fife, a pretty good team, and 52 points per game is hard to beat. So I'm going to go Fife as well. I think they'll get it done this year, but. Tanner's not going to be in that game this year. And in 1A, normally, I think Brantley's won 2 or 3 years in a row as well, but Brantley's not going to be in the game this year. Somebody knocked them out. I think Maplesville is the team that knocked them out. And they're going to be taking on Hubbardville. And, man, I actually got to watch Hubbardville play. They played Phillips in the second round. Times Daly sent me down there to cover that game. Phillips almost beat them, and the game ended in overtime on a fumble. And, I mean, it was a botched snap. The quarterback takes it, he drops it, and they recover the first time. They do it again.
Was it a fumble, Ruski?
No. It was just a fumble. Like he couldn't catch the snap. It was so cold outside. So you
know what fumble Ruski is, don't you?
Oh yeah, the whole Nebraska play. He dropped the ball and somebody pulls around and takes it. I like the old fumble Ruski.
The old fumble Ruski, yeah.
Yeah, has that been outlawed? I mean, is it?
No, it's illegal play.
I've never seen anybody run it.
Well, I mean, it takes a lot of courage to just drop the ball on the ground and everybody run one way, and then because if somebody sees it on the other team, they just pick it up and run it in for a touchdown.
I mean, it's so easy to do.
It's not a play that you would. If there are certain plays that you run, and if they don't work out, well, usually you just lose a down. If you run that play that doesn't work out, you're probably going to lose 6 points.
Oh, yeah, no doubt. So you definitely have to execute that. But speaking of trick plays, I'm glad you mentioned trick plays because the game I went to with Hubbardville and Phillips, Hubbardville scored all their points on trick plays. Normally they run the ball. They're a run-first team. But they run this triple option, they run a triple option. They fake to the fullback. They run to the right side. They look like they're going to run the option. They pitch it, and there's a receiver coming the other way. He catches it, and then he throws to the end zone. So, where did this play come from? And they score. And that's how they scored their first touchdown. Their second touchdown was another reverse kind of play, and then they threw it. And they scored a lot of their touchdowns on the pass in their run-first team. They might throw 5 times a game, and they scored on trick plays. So, I'm glad you mentioned that. So, but by the way Phillips lost that game, I was explaining it. He botched the snap on the first play, and they recovered it. Phillips recovered it. But the second time he did it again, and Hubbardville fell on it. So that's how they lost. So
that's tough.
Yeah, that's a tough way to lose. But when you have to call all these trick plays to win a game, it kind of, I don't know. You can win, but I don't know, man. I might go Maplesville in this game. I don't know if all the trick plays will work, but like Brett Mutzberger said once in let me get it right. Like Brett Mutzberger once said in Waterboy, last game of the year, can't hold anything back. Or no, that was the other guy. You come on.
I think it was Mutzberger.
You got to follow me there.
And then Dan Fouts said, all right, we get it, or something like that.
That was the other way around, actually. Dan said, last game of the year, can't hold anything back, and then Brent Musburger's like, we know. And he's like, shut up, Brent. Man, what a classic movie, though. But last game of the year, for those two teams in Class 1A, last game of the year, can't hold anything back. Hubbardville's going to run all their trick plays. But the problem is, all of them are already on film. So Maplesville will will be able to stop those trick plays since they're all on film. I know they probably went through their whole playbook against Phillips there, because I saw at least 4 trick plays that they ran. I mean, they did a bunch of fake punts.
Have we picked the same team in every game?
You picked Deschler. No, we picked. Yeah, we have.
Well, who are you picking?
I'm going to go Maples.
I'm going Hubbardville.
All right, just so we can have one different.
We got to be different.
And I am winning that percentage, by the way.
You are winning it?
Yeah, I think it's 78-76 right now. So what you'll have to do, if you get this game right,
I'm still going to come up short.
It might be just a little.
Scratch everything. I'm taking Prattville. I'm taking. I'm just kidding.
Go ahead and change all your picks there, but
No, I'm actually thinking Maples. Just off what you're telling me, I think Maples as well. So.
Yeah, but you have all those trick plays, and they're already on film. They ran a fake punt. I think they ran 2 fake punts in that game. They ran that reverse pass. They did some other kind of pass play that they normally wouldn't have done. So all those are on film now. Maplesville is going to scout on those teams or single out those plays. But, it's hard to stop Hubbardville's offense. They're a good running team, but Maplesville too. The points per game, Maplesville scores 48 a game, Hubbardville 41 a game. So 48-41 could be the score there. I'm going to say 48-41 just based off points per game. Maplesville.
Well, it should be high scoring, 38-28.
38-28. And it's going to be fun to watch all these games, Matt. I love this time of year. I especially love watching all the state championship games. I think the best one that I watched last year was Leeds and Madison Academy. Madison Academy really ran away with it there late, but it was a lot of fun to watch it. Watch those guys play. Carry-On Johnson, watching him play, I was like, man, this guy really is one of the best players in the entire state and in the entire nation. I was impressed with that kid going to Auburn.
Yeah, absolutely. Number 3 athlete in the country. According to ESPNU, it's top 100. He's number 3 in the country as an athlete. So I
think 3A might be one of my favorite games to watch there. Jamarius Henderson versus Carry-On Johnson and Malik Miller. That'd be fun to watch. But
yeah, I'm looking forward to seeing. I'm looking forward to the Deschler Leeds game. I'm looking forward to Hoover Prattville. There's so much talent on the field. That's going to be a fun game Wednesday night.
I think that's the one I'm looking forward to the most as well. Deschler and Leeds, I'm definitely going to watch that game. That'll be on at 11, I believe, on Friday.
Friday morning, yep.
Friday morning at 11. And I talked to Rod Winston, a former player for Deschler who plays at UNA now. He said he's going to try to make the trip down there. So,
cool.
Yeah, and I'd love to go with him, but I got a final. So, UNA. Come on, UNA. I'm just kidding. I wouldn't dare say that about my university. But I'm definitely going to watch that game. I'll definitely watch Hoover and Prattville. I think that's going to be one I'm really looking forward to. But most of all, I'm going to have to say this Hubbardville-Maplesville game, I want to see if there's a lot of trick plays.
Yeah, it should be fun. It should be fun. But it's been a fun season, man. I've enjoyed it.
Oh, yeah, and hopefully Deschler can make a run there and maybe win it all for the area.
They made the run.
maybe make a run against Leeds is what I'm saying. Win it all for us, Deschler. We're all behind you here in the Shoals area. So, Matt, I think this is all we have here, but, man, it's been a lot of fun doing these podcasts. We started in week 1. We didn't know what we were talking about, man. It's 23 minutes of nonsense.
14 weeks later, 15 weeks later, we still don't know a whole lot.
We don't. We're not really the experts. We need the fans to tell us what to say.
Well, so, absolutely. Chime in with us.
So, yeah, leave your comments, fans. We want to hear from y'all. And I think last week was one of our best weeks. We had Coach Wallace on the show, and, man, that was legendary. I really enjoyed that.
Yeah, sometimes, I've been guilty of thinking some of these older coaches are kind of living off their name a little bit, and they're just not near as sharp as they used to be. And I tell you what, man, that's a sharp man. He's funny. I kind of jokingly, I said, well, I was asking, why don't you ever wear the headset? And he goes, kind of gives me that look like, I know what's going on. If I need to tell a coach something, I'll let him know. So, he's a great guy and very aware, very intelligent. I think he's the right coach for UNA right now. And we're glad to have him. But it's been a great year, Mike. So I'll look forward to maybe doing some basketball later on and, continue to go to foxsportshows.com and see what's new.
Yeah, hopefully we'll keep doing some basketball podcasts and stuff too. So y'all tune in for that. We'll keep you updated on that. Of course, you can read my blog. I'm going to do a couple more blogs this week to close it out. I may actually just do one more and just cover all the state games there and talk a little bit about them, give a little paragraph there. So check that out. You can read about Florence. I'm going to write about Florence a little bit and how their season went since they got knocked out last week, and write about Deschler as well. So tune in for that. And we got to thank our producer, Jaleesa, for being in here with us today and sitting through our nonsense and boredom. trying to get through her day. So thanks, Jaleesa, for producing the show for us and for all that you do for Fox Sports Shoals and in that aspect. And we want to thank all the listeners that listen to our nonsense and our podcast. So maybe I should stop saying that. We might lose followers.
Who knows?
Who knows? But thank you again for listening to our show, and you can continue to follow us on foxsportshows.com, and there's all kind of good stuff there. And we hope that you'll continue to listen in on 97.9 FM, and you can catch all kind of good stuff on there. So for Matt Selesky, the big guy, I'm the Magic Man, Mike Ezekiel. We hope to see you next year. Fox Sports Shows, Friday Night Football Live.